You're listening to Odyssey, A Tale from the Road, an audiobook by Christopher Cologne. All rights reserved. Any resemblance to persons living or dead are purely coincidental.
Chapter 44. Paul isn't going anywhere tonight. We've got him. Don't worry, the governor winked at me and said, let's get Penny to the stage. I should have been terrified. My life had been threatened, again, by a dangerous man. The governor had a grip on the situation and for some reason, I felt safe. We all made our way from the dressing room to the stage. It looked like a small army. Leading in front was Penny and I. As if by instinct, she put her arm in mine and pulled me close to her side as we made our way to the stage. She wanted me that close, and this was her invitation. It was the first time her skin touched mine, and I felt the electricity jump from her body to mine. Her arms were strong from years of playing fast and heavy guitar, and I felt every vein, tendon and muscle. I felt her pulse racing. For a slight moment, I fooled myself into thinking that her heartbeat had become more intense because of me, but in reality it was mostly because of the importance of tonight's farewell performance. It was nice to be a little self-deluded. On the opposite side of Penny, from me, was the honorable governor. Being the owner of the stadium, he knew his way around backstage. His imposing figure helped cut a swath through the people that were gathered backstage. Security guards, road crew, media people, everybody seemed surprised to see the governor's face at an event such as this. But out of respect and pure intimidation, people stepped out of our way to allow us passage to the stage. Behind us was Minerva, Stephen, Layla leading Bruce Johnson by the hand, and the squad of the governor's state troopers. Penny's, now almost defunct, regiment of suits also kept a perimeter around our whole group. In their own way, the suits were still protecting their property, they just had to give her a wider berth. They were still surrounding her, just not as closely as they had been used to. Penny had a new team, the suits were on their way out. Not that the suits were going to relinquish their control without a solid fight. As we approached the stage, Penny's bandmates had already taken their starting positions in front of their microphones. A curtain had obscured the view of her band from the raucous audience. Her bandmates were waiting for Penny to take her place before the curtain opened. A pre-recorded video played on gigantic monitors on each side of the stage that would signal the beginning of the live performance. Time was running short, Penny had to take the stage. All her band members had looked over at us. Stage lights had whirred around and created a surreal effect, but I could see the disgruntled looks on her bandmates' faces. Penny had a new group of people with her, but to her bandmates, this new entourage was no different from the last. On a night as momentous as this, she never had a chance to have one last band meeting with the people she had called her band. They were supposed to just go through the motions, and get tonight over with, so she could move on to her own solo career, tomorrow. Her bandmates were used to her being isolated and insulated from the band, until just moments before the show. Tonight was to be no different, and that's why they made no futile attempt to try and contact her. The suits had dejected so many attempts in the past, that the band had just gotten used to the protocol. They would take the stage, Penny would join them, just seconds before the curtain opened, she would perform incredibly, and as soon as the last note was played she was whisked away by the suits. A member of her road crew had approached Penny, and gave her the Gibson Les Paul. He was her guitar technician. It was his job to make sure that Penny's guitar was taken care of and in tune for her performance. A good guitar tech was a godsend. I never had the luxury of employing a guitar tech, but I certainly wish I had. I was intensely jealous of Penny for that moment. That a perk of being a successful musician, there were people whose sole purpose was to make sure you sounded your best on stage. Not that I didn't want to sound my best, on a nightly basis, but if I didn't, I had nobody to place the blame on. I noticed her guitar tech had handed her the same Gibson Les Paul that I was playing when I socked Iris in his face. "Thank you," Penny whimpered out to me. Even though she stood right next to me, I barely heard her over the crowd. "Why are you thanking me? You brought me backstage. You didn't have to do that. I wasn't going to miss tonight for anything. Now I get to watching up close and personal from the side of the stage. Your band has inspired me to start playing music. And you," Penny was speaking so low I had to strain my ears to hear her, "you inspired me to keep playing music. My way. Thank you." Penny had taken advantage of the fact that I was leaning in to hear what she was saying, and kissed me on the lips. It was a pleasant surprise. It was better than anything I would have expected. It was the best kiss of my life. Without saying anything else, Penny pulled the guitar strap over her shoulder and she ran out to the stage. As if on cue, the stage curtain opened, and the band started to play their first notes. The band has done this a million times before. They were a well-oiled machine, and they started to play. The music was cranked all the way up, and the crowd's cheers were deafening. It was pure ecstasy. This was the closest thing I was getting to a religious experience. I knew every word and every chord, every cymbal crash and drum fill. My body jerked around as I played imaginary instruments. I may have known how to play the guitar parts, but when I entered this mental zone, I imagined I could also play the drums. I mimicked my hands as if I was playing an invisible drum kit. I screamed out every lyric, as if I was trying to compete with the combined volume of the crowd and the walls of amplifiers. If I kept this up, I would have sore vocal cords before we even hit the halfway point in the set. I thrashed and whiplashed my neck along with the music. I know I must have looked like a total geek, flailing about on the side of the stage, but I was a fan. This is how fans act. I wished I was down in the actual crowd so I could throw myself into a mosh pit. I was getting a little too old for the slam dancing hordes in front of the stage, but I could have used a release valve for my aggression. I liked moshing, it was cathartic. All of our entourage stood just off to the side of the stage. We were viewing the band's profile as they performed. Sure, it would have been nice to be somewhere in the stadium, watching from the seats, but this was a hell of a lot better. We were up close and personal. I was enjoying myself jumping up and down in spastic movements that could have been confused for a seizure. I looked like one of those people who attend an evangelical sermon and jump out of their seat and start shouting in tongues because they feel like they have the Spirit running through their body. I had no shame. I was watching the woman I love, in all her glory, doing what she does best, shred on that fucking guitar. It kicked all types of ass. I was in a trance, mesmerized by the moment. I almost didn't recognize Arnie Ellis standing all the way on the other end of the stage. He was waiting in the shadows and I wondered how long he might have been there watching me seize and twist. What caught my attention was when I noticed the large mane flick a lighter and light a small cigar clasped between his teeth. It reminded me of lightning illuminating up a night sky. Sadly, the first thing that popped into my head was, hey, it's against the law to smoke in the stadium. Then I noticed whose fat face it was, clutching the cigar. The burning embers on the end of his cigar brought out the definition of his face in the dark. Then I thought, of course he can smoke anywhere he wants. That's Arnie Ellis, the brother of the governor. His brother owns the stadium. It's Arnie Ellis, the man who wants to kill me. I was enjoying myself up to point. It took a moment for my brain to register the stranger on the end of the stage was the same man who I'd been running from all this time. Standing next to Arnie was Paul, one thin, lithe figure standing next to a huge fat one. It reminded me of Bert and Beatrice, the skinny and fat, husband and wife cannibals that wanted to kill and eat me and my bandmates. What was it about that combination of body types of people that wanted to do me harm? Must just be a coincidence. Arnie knew that he caught my attention, most likely by the way my eyes were popping out of my head. He made direct eye contact with me and pointed his finger in my direction. He then violently pointed his finger at the ground in front of him. That gesture communicated, you come here, now. I don't think anybody else in my entourage saw what was going on. Paul stood next to Arnie smugly smiling like a teacher's pet. They had me trapped. Arnie was summoning me to him. The whale lived up to his name. He was so big, that it took a lot of effort for him to move. He didn't waste energy moving if he didn't need to. But he was giving me special attention, getting up on his feet because it meant getting to me. He was so powerful, that in the past, people would respond to him calling them from across a room. If they made him expend any more energy than he needed to, they would pay dearly for their sin. He boldly expected me to extend that courtesy to him. I entertained the idea for a moment, of just walking into the whale's clutches. I was scared for my life. I backed up several feet and bumped into two large men in shark skin suits. I wasn't looking to where I was going. Arnie had sent them as an insurance policy that I wouldn't just turn and run, like I was expecting to do. One of Arnie's men took his big meat hook of a hand and clamped down on my shoulder blade. He spoke directly into my ear, the boss wants to see you. The side of my face was showered in hot, rank, spittle. I wanted to wipe it off, but I didn't want to make any sudden moves or this guy would snap me in half. The two goons escorted me away from the side of the stage. Nobody from my entourage had seemed to notice that I was being led away. Everybody in my group was too distracted by the band's dynamic performance on stage to notice my absence. Right before I was pulled out of sight, one of the suits turned around and saw me getting railroaded out of the area. I mouthed the word help, hoping he would understand I was in trouble. He seemed to understand all too fully. He smiled, relishing in the fact I was in trouble. I had tried to step on his and his fellow suits' toes, now I was going to get what was coming to me. He mockingly waved goodbye as I was pushed out of the area and out of everybody's line of sight. I swore to myself that he was going to pay for that.
Please visit twostrangerspodcast.net.